Ladies,
Gentlemen,
people,
courting couples,
and all our single folk,
we've got something just for you.
tours.
Sky 99.5 FM Reloaded is the place to be every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m.
to 11 p.m.
with yours truly, Mr. and Mrs. Mahon. Join the conversation as we dive deep into the taboo topics around love, marriage, and relationships. Topics like sex and intimacy,
How to live and cleave,
money,
issues,
infidelity,
singles in the church,
and more. So join us every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m.
to 11 p.m.
right here on Sky 99.5 FM Reloaded.
All right. It is that time. And we say good evening to all of our Sky family once again. Good. Somebody's having fun. Good evening, Mrs. Mahon.
Good evening to you.
And welcome to Marriage Mentors.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
Good to be here. So, as we said this evening, for those of you that missed it, we are doing a very interesting topic that was given to us by a young lady. Only how old? How old? 14?
15.
15? Yeah, 15-year-old. And she suggested a really interesting topic that we really want to delve into this evening because she's not married, but I think it's important. So wherever you are, Sky family, we welcome you to Marriage Mentors this evening as we discuss navigating marriage when you have different calls on your life, when you both have a different calling. She is into travel and, let's say, missionary work, and he is into construction. I'm just using two random things, right? Or let's say she's into finance and he's into gardening, right? And how do you navigate the marital terrain while having those very different calls on your life? So we want to get into that. But I believe too, I want to ask our Sky family, have you seen, or do you think that having different calls on your life can promote or present, let me use that word, present challenges in a marriage? Do you believe that having different calls in a marriage can present challenges? So send us your WhatsApp messages via 333-9950.
So the woman could be a stay-at-home mom, and the husband is a missionary. Yes, travels. That's kind of tricky. Tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be tricky. I'd kind of ask what she's staying home to do.
Stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, she's a stay-at-home mom. She would. Let me don't jump ahead. Let me don't jump ahead. But do you think having different calls, having a different each partner having a different calling, can present some challenge in their marriage? Do you think that having different calls can present challenges in a marriage? Just by how I was going to respond, you kind of have a view of, you have a foretaste of my perspective there, but my perspective is not necessarily yours. So I want to hear from you. Do you think that having different calls on your life as a married couple, can it present challenges? All right. Says yes, it can, especially if it wasn't a marriage ordained by God. All right. All right. I like that comment. You can also give us a quick call at 625-2759. 625-2759. Yes. For a moment there, I'm like, am I saying the correct number? But yes, 625-2759.
But these calls are just to answer the question, right? We're not gonna jump into any um details just yet.
Yeah. We want to find out from you. Do you think having different calls in a marriage, each partner having their own calling, can present a challenge to the marriage? Yes or no? A simple poll, yes or no? Um, all right. Cherie says yes. So far, it's been yeses. Everyone finds that, well, so far. Kish, what do you think? What do you think? Do you think a husband having one particular call and the wife having another call on their life, do you think that it can present a challenge in their marriage? Singrid, what about you? Because I know we have a lot of experience here in Sky Family. A lot of experience. I don't know, just for a moment, it just was like, am I saying the right number? Yeah. Yeah. She said, sing it like Brandon and Justice, and you'll get the correct number. All right. Kish says it can, depending on how polarizing the two callings are. All right. All right. Let me ask you, because
I'm going to say explain in some more
yeah,
detail,
give
but
us an example. When you say polarizing, what do you mean? Because your polarizing might be slightly different to mine. So I just want to make sure that, or to understand your perspective. I know what polarizing mean, but I just want your a little more depth in your perspective. Yeah. So she says, if it depending on if it's polarizing, then it can present some challenge. Yeah. Because some couples, they end up at a state of war, and they're not sure why. Why they believe that they can't really work together and develop very strong beliefs coming out of that. And it's just that they simply don't understand that might be a factor. Reina, good evening to you. She says, good night, Mr. and Mrs. Mahon. She said, my answer is yes. There will be problems and challenges that will arise because when God puts kingdom couples together, he does so for the couples to fulfill purpose and destiny together. All right. All right. I like your thought process. Yeah. So some couples tend to have some turbulence, if we could put it like that. You know, when a plane is flying and it's going through some clouds, clouds aren't necessarily something you can hold physically.
yeah.
But when you're flying through it, you can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like you just can't put your finger on what it is, but it's creating bumps and it's creating a rough ride. And sometimes this can be one of the contributors to turbulence in a marriage. So, we asked the question, do you think that having different callings in a marriage can present some measure of challenge? All right, Kish says, example, one calling is to travel and spend the minority of time at home, and the other's calling requires them to be fixed and plant roots, right? As you were saying, in terms of a housewife
Yes.
and one who travels. But can they find balance though? Do you think it's possible to find balance?
I think it is possible, you know. It is possible, but we just have to find ways to balance the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't say it is not possible because I've seen it. I've seen it. And it's just to really search for the right ways to make it work, especially if um your heart and mind, you know, is determined to make it work
Yeah.
and you really understand what it is all about. Yeah. Once you have understanding and the willingness to put in the work that is necessary to survive, yeah.
But and you're saying survive. It kind of leads me back to when we were talking about marriage culture, when we did marriage culture. And yet again, here it comes up where there is a need for the couple to sit and have conversations about these particular
Yeah.
areas. What are we going to be doing? How are we going to be dealing with particular things regarding work and call and ministry and all these various involvements that we have?
Yeah.
How are we going to approach those things as a couple when children come? How are we going to deal with these things when if someone falls ill? How are we going to you're making preparation and just thinking things through logistically in your marriage. So you want to sit and have that measure of conversation about culture, and I say culture, whether it's a deal breaker for him or her, that they're not able to travel anymore.
Yeah.
If they understand, because sometimes it's understanding or expectations that, okay, I'll be able to travel with you all the time. Let's say in this particular case, the wife is the stay at home and the husband travels. Probably they used to travel before together, and without discussion, the point came when they now have a child and now they presented or forced to make a decision. Let's make a decision that says, for some reason, the whole family cannot continue to travel, whether it be for safety or health reasons, whatever it might be. Maybe she was on bed rest during pregnancy and all of these various contributors that could have said, well, here's what, you're now a stay-at-home mom, and which changes the nature of expectation. Sometimes a bit of a conversation can help these things, but many times it doesn't happen. And the couple is now having some rough times because it's not the way that it used to be. And she's now feeling stuck at home while he gets to go and see the world.
That's the reason why I would have used that example because it's challenging.
Yeah.
It is, especially when she starts feeling frustrated. That's the times you'll hear. Well, you're so lucky and you get into this, you get into that.
I'm the one.
Yes. It's me alone.
You start. You start. All right. So we are delving into the meat of the matter as we could not avoid how to deal with situations like that where couples have different callings and they now have to try to maintain those things. But in this case, probably they were both traveling. But let's say she, let's give her another work, type of job where she's very active still, but in another direction. Cherie says, "Oh, that's why Miss said it was a bit of a challenging question." Yeah, it is. It is. When life begins to change, and you can't do what you used to do anymore, how are you going to handle it? Yeah, how are you going to handle it? Coming back to it, let's say they're both flight attendants. They got married. Right? They're both married. They probably met somewhere. Their flights caused them to meet in one part of the world, but they both work for different airlines, right? And now they decided, hey, let's get married. But they were okay with still working for their airlines. It didn't work out where they could both work for the same airline, but they are still working for different airlines. And she becomes pregnant and has a child. Changes everything. She's now beginning to travel. She can't travel any longer because the baby is there. He would have probably take paternity leave and stayed home for a bit and then went back out to work after. And she's remembering all the voyages in the sky and going to this place and that place and the other place and staying in these hotels, and life is nice, and having breakfast at this hotel. 1 minute you're in this part of the world and next minute and he's sending her pictures all the time, and it's kind of prodding and poking her on her soft spot, right? It's not anything about money, but it's about passion, drive, and desire, and what I'm accustomed to and what I like. And I got into this job because I always wanted to travel and see the world. And now it's because of you. I'm tied down. Now you don't want to you don't want to throw it on the child. So the next best person is to throw it on the husband. Because he's still getting to roam, but she has to stay home and be our mother. He's still working. And yes, I put it in inverted commas. He's still working, but he's getting the opportunity to be here, there, and everywhere while she's at home. And some may say, well, she's being selfish because he wanted to have a family and whatever. What does one do with their quote unquote calling, even when life begins to happen? And I say life begins to happen, changes happen. You become a mother, you become a wife, wife and mother. And your calling is now hanging in the balance. These are the questions that now begin to arise because many a times we've seen, whether in movies or you hear someone talking about it, a married person, I gave up all of my dreams for all you. And when the children got older, and you hear some people say that, I sacrificed all my dreams and my this and my ambitions for you children, and now all is so ungrateful. Right? And when you hear that, is it now sacrificing of dreams and ambitions and stuff like that? Or is it the other way around? right? Is it the other way around in terms of when what I'm asking here now, what really is the priority? Because making a statement like that is very, very strong. And to say, okay, that you sacrificed for the children, and it's almost like you're missing out on something. But what really is the priority? Yeah. And that is where that's a question that begins to surface when you think about statements like that. But again, coming back to the calling, having a call on your life, where does that fall in your list of priorities? Because many a times we put that very high. And if we were to pull this now into just from a general term into a very specific Christian term, your calling in terms of whether it be, let's say it's any married couple, but they're in church and they're very much involved in church activities, and she's involved in women's ministry, he's involved in men's ministry, and probably she's also involved in the children's ministry, and he's involved in some measure of outreach and everything. They're well involved. They now have children, and the children are now involved in church and very active. But a lot of the times, too, marriage begins to get neglected.
Yep.
What really is the priority? Now, I'm asking that question as a rhetorical question because we have touched on particular things inside of this discussion already. What now is the priority when you think about it? Yes, it's your calling, it's your God-given calling, but how do you balance now? What does balance really look like? We're using the word balance, but many times we say, all right, when you think about balance, you think equal amounts of weight on both sides, right? The fulcrum in the middle and equal amounts of weight on both sides. Think of a seesaw. The heavier one always drops.
Yeah.
The lighter one goes up in the air. Depending on how fast they go down, somebody flies up. Whoever between me and you, girl, I think I just have you pitching up in the air. We must, no long way gonna see, so we must do that. It goes so. But yeah, what does balance look like? Hey, Crank, good evening to you. Says once it's God's work, you have to make it a priority. All right, I like that you said that. But when it comes to the activity and your family life, which one of them is God's work? Which one of them really is God's work? I like that you made that comment, but when it's now ministry or things happening in church and family life, which one actually is the priority?
Shooting hard.
No, this is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
When we think about balance, when we think about calling, when we think about, all right, he says ministry, right? All right.
That's why I didn't answer.
All right. So, Crank, in this case, are you alluding to the fact that marriage and family life is not God's work? Tell me. Because if you're saying ministry, and I'm guessing that you're talking about church activities, that's ministry. Marriage, in this case, marriage and family life, that does not categorize as ministry. Just clarify for me. So, and I like that he went there, and he's now opening up this a little bit more, because he says kinda. When you say kinda, what do you mean? You're giving me some vague, very brief answers, man. Right? So it's interesting that it says it's 50-50. Okay, you're driving. We'll send a voice note next thing you know. Hello. I don't want no trouble there, you know. Yeah, send a voice note or something. All right. So let's put that into further perspective. Same thing. All right, so let's put that into some more perspective. Erica, good evening to you. She wants to know if they didn't give you a headache. She says, what an interesting topic, but whether work or ministry, I think it has to do with compromise and understanding in the marriage. All right. So let's put some things into perspective. Marriage was instituted by God. Let's cover those bases. Marriage was instituted by God. Church activity was not.
True.
Right? Let's clarify that. Those were things that came out of, those were initiatives that were built as spin-offs. It wasn't an institute by God, right? So men's ministry, women's ministry, those weren't things that God established. And I say he didn't say, all right, go, men go and start a men's ministry, women go and start a women's ministry, that kind of thing. I do understand, Erica. It's no problem. It's no problem. Marriage in itself was instituted by God. So therefore, we have to think, okay, I think a lot of our concepts as to what ministry is has to be rearranged. And I say rearranged simply because if God placed a lot of priority on relationships, right? If you have a gift, he says, and you have aught against a brother, right? This points to the emphasis he places on relationships. If you have a gift, let's say you're a worship leader and you are about to go and do worship, and you have some sort of disagreement or an issue with a brother, a sister, a relational issue, your spouse, your children, he says, lay down your gift and go and sort out the issue. Put down the gift and go and sort out the issue. So in the world that we live in today, we prioritize the utilizing of the gift over relational things. We still go up on the stage, the pulpit, what have you, and we sing, we use the gift with a lot of dysfunctional or affected relationships happening, not so?
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, our concept of what ministry is has been rearranged. In God's eyes, marriage is your ministry. So if you're married, after your personal relationship with God, relationship is what ministry is. When you minister before the Lord, you are actually addressing the issue of your relationship with God. Right? So the priests, they ministered before the Lord. And now we are all a kingdom of priests, right? So therefore, we understand what ministry is. Ministry is relationship. It's not the activity, it's not the vocation of what we do in church, right? It's relationship. So therefore, the scope of prioritizing relationships changes if we understand that God is after ensuring that relationships are stable. Because if he said, if it be possible, by all means live at peace with all men, right? And if he gives that kind of clear, detailed description that you should put effort into maintaining relationships, establishing and maintaining relationships, then we can understand the relationships begin to float to the top because it has so much emphasis on it. If you were to say, or if we were to say, we know what helium balloons are, right? And if you take just a little bit of helium and put it in a balloon and you tie a weight on it to keep it down, you put like 1 ounce, and I'm just using measurements here, random measurements. Not that that's exactly the measurement you use to measure gas, but I'm saying 1 ounce of helium in one. You have 3 balloons. You put 3 ounces in balloon number 2. That one has more helium in it. So it looks more full and it's actually pulling, and they all have the same amount of weights on it. And then balloon number 3 has 50 ounces, and that is now beginning to lift the weight off the ground and float to the ceiling. Consider those things your priorities, right? Consider your priorities like that. The emphasis that God places on it, it's almost like the more helium you put in that balloon to cause that thing to become a priority. God never places heavy priority on church activity. Never did that. Show me a scripture where he said, other than go ye into all the world and preach the gospel, everything else was building and fixing relationship with human beings, with each other. What is the greatest commandment? The greatest commandment is love the Lord your God. Let me go King James on you. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Right? Didn't mean to be preaching, but we have to we have to look at marriage from this very structural point of view. The institutor, the instigator, the fabricator, the author of marriage said, this is what marriage is supposed to be. He instituted marriage. He instituted how relationships should be built. So therefore, the amount of effort that God creates over something or in something or for something, we have to be placing those kinds of emphases on the very same thing. So therefore, if he places a lot of emphasis, let me tell you, let me put it this way. If you are a married person and you have, whether you have children or not, you go to a church, your first place of ministry, I said this before, and let's emphasize that and say it again. Your first place of ministry is to your spouse, right? It is to your spouse. It is not to the church that you attend and your vocation or your church responsibilities, where you apply your giftings. That's not where your place of ministry is. If we take ministry out of the home and carry it in church, that is why we have toxic homes. That is why we have dysfunctional homes. This is why we have pastors who have dysfunctional homes, because the church became their first place of ministry and not at home. You realize when I'll find that scripture where he said, anyone who cannot lead his family is not fit to lead the church. But we have it the other way around. You can lead the church and you'll deal with your family after. No, that's not how it works. Your practice place, your training ground is your family. That's where you have to get it right first before you begin to do it at church, right? So that your family, you and your family become an example for the church. We have it the other way around, where all hell breaking, the pastor children, doing the most. But then he coming to tell you and your child how all you're supposed to do things. That is an oxymoron, right? It's his responsibilities to actually sort things out home. First, and keep things in a particular order. When he talked about pastors and deacons and shepherds, supposed to be husband of one wife and wife to one husband, all of those things, very, very detailed. And orderly homes and children that know their roles and responsibilities. There were very, very detailed things. So when we take this and put ministry, and I say ministry in terms of church activities, and yes, people groups are important. It helps and aids in interpersonal development, right? Or that sharpening of one another. But your priority, it's almost like church is similar to a AA group, right? It does not take away the emphasis of personal correct activity. When someone says, well, I've been 2 years, 6 months, 3 days, 40 minutes sober, it's not about the group, No. It's about their personal walk. That is why they can count the validity of their walk of being sober, their walk of doing things right, no longer being connected to what was the danger that they once involved themselves in. But many a times we place the focus on the group. So many persons are like this now. Well, I'm a part of an AA group, Alcoholics Anonymous, or let's say Drug Users Anonymous, or Pornographers Anonymous. We do that. We're almost like that when it comes to church. We are part of a group. But when we look at our lives, have we been building a track record of keeping away from the things that we went to that group for? Many a times we go to the group and still continue to practice. So that is why I'm saying it's almost like we place more emphasis on being a part of the whatever anonymous group than the life of abstinence from the thing that we went there for. Right? So many a times we take ministry and put it in a particular place. So if you're wondering, how on earth did we get here? We're talking about balancing when you have two different callings. And we went there simply so that we can clarify what ministry is. Your ministry is not your vocation. So, therefore, or the things that you help pastor with, and I'm putting it in some very simple terms, the things that the church activity, the ministries that you get involved in during the week and a Sunday morning and whenever, whether you clean, you help tidy the church, you're part of hospitality or the pastoral team, you're on worship team or whatever group you are part of, media, whatever. Those things are giftings, and that is not your primary place of ministry. You get married, you start a family, that now moves down in the priority list, and your wife or your husband and your children now take priority over what you do at church. So therefore, it begins to point now, how do we balance the two? The balancing is that placing marriage and family first. Right? We're not saying that before I go there, we have a couple of voice notes, right? We have a couple of voice notes before I get into that.
And also to my Sky family and my cookies and cream, Anna Marie. I love this question you all come up with. I'm in all your company. You see, I have seen family, I would say family first and then ministry. Reason being is because I've seen husband, wives, you know, focus on the ministry, right? Neglect family. And when the family fall apart, right? When they could have had other people they could have put to deal with certain things for the ministry, they take advantage of one person. They see that one person is who is willing to always say, well, okay, yes, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they put in always into the ministry, right? When the ministry we are all one body. So there are other people who can find, you can say, well, look, do this for me or do that for me. So you're able to find time to focus on your family values, so I would say family.
Yeah.
This one here, why I really stick to is because I remember it at one time my stepfather, right? He passed away, and he will always be there going down by the church building to do things because you know he will be the one always going to do things. And one day my mom asked him to stay home with her, and he said, "But who would be there to help this other person?" And he went, and she talked about it, and then we understand that that point in time she needed him to just stay with her. She needed the company, and he went to like mix gravel or whatever it is they were supposed to do, you know. So, and it was, yes, it was concerning the building itself, right? So we have to consider sometimes our spouse, our family feeling. That's why I said I knew something like that.
Yeah, very, very interesting because families fall apart simply because of this mix up of priority. And this is why Matthew 7:21 to 23 was written. And many a times we look at it in a particular light, where, and Matthew 7:21 talks about, on that day many shall say to me, Lord, Lord, didn't we do this? Didn't we do that? Didn't we do that in your name? And he says, depart from me because or for I never knew you, right? Which also highlights again the qualification of the importance of relationship. We can't say that we're acting or doing spiritual things without having a spiritual relationship. Yeah. We can't say that we love and we have a family-oriented kind of environment at church, and we don't have a family-oriented kind of environment at home. Because it's let me put that same situation in that scripture. Many will stand before him on that day and say, Lord, will I help build the camaraderie in church? I help this brother and sister stay together and married, right? And he says, and your wife or your children can testify against you and say, depart from me because I never knew you. You weren't a father to me. You weren't a spouse to me. Or even telling that to your own spouse. Look at how many couples I've helped, but your own marriage is in shambles. Look at how many children I've helped, but your own child is suffering for attention and love and appreciation and just share interaction, father-child interaction. But we do it so easily at church. And we miss the fact that marriage and family is your first place of ministry. But we see so much grandeur in doing it outside than doing it at home. Yeah? He says, preach, brother. Yes, Abby, good evening to you. She says you should really go to a park because the stress level and age reduce significantly. She said she yeah, the seesaw, yeah. I agree. Mrs. Mahon loves swings. She wouldn't spend a lot of time with me on the seesaw. She'll go right, she'll spend a little time with me on the seesaw, but then I have to go push her on the swing. She says she agrees with Lynden about having balance. I'm of the opinion that even though God has called you into ministry, he didn't say to neglect others or to neglect your family in the process. Because how can you be an example and witness to others about having an effective family life when you're only going about God's work in inverted commas, but you're never around or available for your family? Family here being your spouse and children specifically. Yes, Abby, yes, so totally true. Your ministry should also include your family because this works as an effective witness. That's Matthew 7:21 right there. It works as an effective witness when persons see a family working together for the Lord. Now, you can have an image of the family working together, but still dysfunctional at home. They have to see the evidence of that, how you work things through, that you are an example of what you're saying and what you're doing and what you're sharing in the various groups at church. They have to see that at work. If they have no ability to reach you as an individual to see those things in practice, they're coming to tell Sister Darcy and Brother John that you know me and names, that you all have to work this way, and you're telling your husband you need to be more understanding and gentle with leading your wife, and as a wife you're telling Sister Darcy, you have to remember, give your husband the space to lead, and then he balling up at his own wife, and he leading. So there is no clear example. There is a distance or a separation, a difference between what he's saying and what he does with his own family. So the family is that training ground, that practice place of what's supposed to happen in quote unquote church activity, of your Christian vocation, if we could put it like that. Because we have to begin to pull that ministry word back home. We always talk about this old saying, charity begins at home and then abroad. We have to bring that love. Another word for love, for charity, is love. Bring that love, bring that ministry back home. and that love for ministry back home, because many a times family is neglected, children are neglected, marriages are neglected, because we see all the glitz and glamour and the glory on church activity and not in fixing things at home. Yeah. It's a very interesting topic, I must say. Um, all right, Radhika is making a comment here. Good night, sister and brother. Yes, very good topic, but some men never respect their family. So how could they do God's will when they're not doing or living right with their wife and their marriage? Marriage with their wife. Marriage is serious. God's word is truth. So serve him with all your heart. Very true, Radhika. And that's actually the point that we're making. That is the point that we're making. We invalidate the ministry that we do. And every time I'm saying ministry, if you're watching us via the website, you'll be seeing me doing some air quotes. Whenever we say ministry is that ministry is meeting a need, right? Right? We can agree on that. Because if you minister at church, you're meeting a need. There's a need for worshipers. You make yourself available to meet the need. There's the church need cleaning. You go and minister at church. You meet the need. They need people to serve their hungry people that need to be fed, and you're making yourself available to meet the need. So ministry is meeting a need. How can you neglect the needs of your family and say that you're ministering there and you're not ministering at home? Ministry is meeting the need. Ensure that you're ministering at home to your spouse and your children before you try to get that done at church. Because you invalidate, you reduce the value of what you do at church without having a witness, a testament at home with your family. Yeah, that's where your ministry starts. You can't skip ahead and jump to the end and say, well, yes, I am involved in ministry. I have 20 something years under my belt, blah, 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 making all kind of statements. But marriage failing, children going haywire, they lashing out, all kind of thing, because you're giving yourself more to everyone else and neglecting them at home. Many, how many pastors' kids, PKs, we used to call them growing up, talk about that. Everybody home in the house, and they're extending themselves to everybody. Tom, Dick, Harry, Jane, John, Jackson, and Jeffrey children, home by them, but their own children feel neglected.
Money.
So, yes, and we're still talking about balancing when your call is different. So let's put that a little bit more into perspective. 5 minutes to the top of the hour of 10 o'clock here. This is a teaching session, you realize?
I've seen a lot of responses. I'm really enjoying this topic.
Yeah. So when it comes to your call, you can have a calling. No one says you can't have a calling. You're single and you're listening to the call on your life and you're giving yourself to it. The moment you decide, I see this girl and I like her, or see this young man and he like me and I like him back, and you say, all right, let's get to know one another better, and you see marriage in sight and stuff like that. All of that time, your calling is literally going up in smoke, if I could say it that way.
You say that way? Let's say
your calling is going up in
smoke.
That? Simply because it's now beginning to evaporate as a priority or reduce in its importance as a priority. Something new is emerging, which reminds me of this scripture I was playing it back this week. Isaiah 43, 18 and 19. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Right? So are you not perceiving that a new priority is emerging? You're beginning to start a family. Therefore, that becomes the most important thing after your personal relationship with God. Your marriage now becomes your highest point after your relationship with the Lord. You developing yourself personally, going and study the word and worship, not what you do at church, what you do on your own, building your personal life and gravitas, developing your spiritual skill and knowledge of Christ and walking in his way. That is your first responsibility, spending time with God, loving up on God. After that, if you are a married person, it's your spouse. If you have children, your children come after. It's not the children before the spouse, you know. Some persons put the children, they get married, they love upon the spouse. When the children come, the husband and or the wife take a back seat. This is now my eyeball until 18, 20 years later, you and who you're married are now strangers and all you're fit for divorce because you all don't know one another. And these little munchkins came between and created a chasm between you both. Your marriage is your first, after God, is your first place of ministry. We have a voice note.
Yes, Lynden, that is so true. Everybody outside getting attention, and your family home not getting the attention what they're supposed to get. I know about that. I've been there. That is not a nice thing at all, at all, at all. You understand?
Totally agree with you, Singrid. Yes, I understand. Hi, oh, good evening. She said she now tuned in. So we're talking about balancing marriage and your calling, especially when your calling is different. So as I was saying a while ago, just a few more seconds before the top of the hour, when you move from being a single person and you chasing after your calling and developing your giftings and stuff like that, and you decide now, I am going to quote unquote settle down. This is why we use the term settle down. I'm going to settle down. It means a change of priority. That presupposes a change of your priorities. So your spouse, I think Paul said it this way. Those who are single, you have time to labor for the Lord, right? That's church activity he was talking about. You have time. But for those, that's why he said it is better to marry than that scripture where he was talking about it is better to marry than to burn. And those of you who are married, your loyalty or your passion is now for your husband. He was putting it into perspective for us. And he was giving us perspective on how God sees it. So if you have the perspective, you have the trend of thought that your ministry is what you do now at church. You're in charge of the decorating team, your decor and whatever it might be. You're the person, you're on the hospitality team, and you're the person responsible for bringing pastors coconut water every Sunday.
You're bad.
You're
bad.
That is not, and you ain't bringing a glass of coconut water for your own husband. Something wrong with that. And you're well wrapping up the glass nice with a napkin to make it look good for pastor. And your husband can't get that, something wrong. something is wrong. Everything is for pastor and pastor. Don't do that. That is not your primary place. If you cannot do that for your husband, then you have no place to do it, to serve another man. Some people give more effort at church and to pastor. To be very honest, his wife should be the one serving him. That's who should be serving him. What did he marry for? To have concubines? Because that's what it tends to look like, yeah? But that's another topic for another day. The one that should be serving him, really, that's her place of honor. To bring pastor stuff. That's why she's the first lady, so that she can serve him. And I know this is not largely talked about, but this is what we know the balance of ministry is. We honor God when we function in marriage correctly. We honor God when we build our families correctly. Not that we build a monarch with, or a kingdom with many servants that do our bidding. So therefore, we have to bring ministry back home where it belongs. If a husband or a wife, you have responsibilities, you've taken up responsibilities. Paul talks about if you just got married, take a year off. Right? He said that, take a year off when you just got married. You know what was the reason for that? So that you both can bond and rearrange your priorities. If your pastor is calling you back and your pastor listening tonight and you're doing people that, you're violating the priorities of the Lord. It is their responsibility now to rearrange their priorities. Yes, there's stuff that needs to be done in the church. I do agree, but there are other people that can also do it. Allow other people to grow and develop as well. But their priority now is what they're being called to do, which is marriage. And that might be an inflection point for the pastor who's thinking, well, they have been doing this for a long time and they're the ones, no, get someone else. And if he's thinking, well, that is their priority, then it says to me, his marriage is not his priority either. Because if it is then enforced, then it is the belief system of the leader himself. After your personal relationship, I'll say it again, after your personal relationship, you're a married person, you have children, that is your first place of ministry. It's not being usher in church, it's not being the on the protocol team or whatever it is they may call it at your faith community. Your first place of ministry is your marriage. Yeah, we have a voice note here.
Brother Lynden, you're so correct. Too many times we do ministry on our side and not to our family, to our husband or to our wife. You know, I remember doing hospitality away. And when Pastor, put wet, so his face wet, you see me patting his face or putting on his robe and doing those things. And I don't think I would do that to my husband. So really let us do ministry first and then on the outside. So much love. Yeah, bye.
Wow. Wow. Now you heard what she said. Let me play that back again. Let me play that back again. I'll play that back again.
On the outside and not to our family, to our husband or to our wife. I remember doing hospitality away.
Right? So listen carefully. Listen carefully to what she says.
And when Pastor, put wet so his face wet, you see me patting his face or putting on his robe and doing those things. And I don't think I would do that to my husband. So really let us do ministry first and then on the outside, so much love to care. Bye.
All right. So therein lies the rule. If you can't do that for your husband, don't do it for your pastor. And I'm not saying because you're doing it for your husband, you do it for your pastor, because you wouldn't sleep with your pastor. I have to say it. Right? That's what his wife is there for. I didn't, my plan was not to go here like Mrs. What to hit she had. Are you ashamed of me? No, my plan was not to go so in depth and to mash any corners. But yes, there are many practices that we do have today that are strange. Some persons would go and wipe pastor sweat off of it, which is what you're saying. Wipe his sweat off of his brow, but they'll scorn their own husband's sweat. His sweat, the pastor sweat holy. Priorities. Ministry. Priority, ministry. Let's think about, let's say, plain talk, bad manners. Frank talk. Plain talk, frank talk. They're not bad manners, but Mrs. One touchy face, yes. She do like Hezekiah.
Could you do that?
It's not meant to offend. It's meant to open eyes so that we understand. Because too many families, marriages are living, are underperforming and living without the resource that they need, simply because the ones responsible for resourcing it and meeting the needs aren't doing it. And they're found doing it elsewhere. And then we wonder why, because I kept asking, Lord, why is there less glory in your house? Yeah? Why is there less glory in your house? I'm saying like you're living by the airport. You're talking plain dog. Why is there less glory in your house? Because there's less respect in the home. Less honor in the home. Less ministry in the home. Let's bring honor, respect, and ministry back home, and you'll see how the glory is in the house of God. It is there that heaven takes note when we talk to one another. Remember that scripture?
Yeah.
Those that feared the Lord spoke to one another, and the book of remembrance was written about those that honored the Lord. So having that measure of ministry functional, healthy in your home, it's going to be much easier for you to do it in the other spheres of life that you have responsibility in. I love how the Forge put it. I love it, right?
For the actual group. Holding up the
Yes. I love how they put it. All right, so Venus is asking, is your ministry your training ground for your marriage or your home? To be quite honest, no. And hear me out why I say no. Have you ever been able to honestly get a grasp of how to operate at home by the ministry that you do in church? Venus, can you I'm directing this question to you as well. Have you ever gotten a template of how to minister at home by what you do in church? Practically. You say yes. All right. Give me an example. Share with me an example. And I say practically, how to, because take for instance, before you send your message back, if let's say you're doing children's ministry, right? You have people's children for, let's say, however long Sunday school or children's church is, let's say an hour, right? Half an hour to an hour before church start, while church going on, whatever it is the case. Or you have it on another day, whatever the case might be. And you have your lesson plans. Yes, the children act how they act, whether they're quiet, whether they're noisy. Your focus is your lesson plan, right? Yeah. How are you doing that at home with your children? How? If your focus is to execute the lesson plan because you want them to do this particular activity, get this memory verse, practice it so when they come back next week, probably they would have rehearsed it and stuff like that. But when you have children 24/7, when I say 24/7, you can't escape from these, you could escape from the ones in church. When church over, Sunday school over, them gone. You gone home now to your children. This is on a completely different level. The patience that you have with Sunday school or children's church children and your children is two different levels of patience, two different categories of patience. So therefore, that can't prepare you for this. Yeah. It is only seeing the example of another family unit functioning effectively that will inspire you to do it correctly in yours. Right? So I get that you're saying, yes, it inspires, it can encourage you, or it is a training ground, or you learn something. You may learn quote unquote principle, but you see hands-on experiential example, you would never get it through the executing of your ministry. Sure. Simply because you're there practicing or filling a need, right? But it doesn't necessarily always show you the principle that you now have to apply on a much larger scale at home. Because many a times the issues that you encounter while you're at church, it's very different to what you encounter at home. Dealing with sister yes, dealing with Sister Darcy in church, when Sister Darcy probably give you some kind of weird attitude. It's a different response you'll have to Sister Darcy. Probably it's easier for you for it to fly over your head because you're probably saying, well, Sister Darcy having some kind of a hard day or something. But we don't necessarily do that when it comes to our spouses and people at home. We don't consider it, well, they're probably having a bad day. And we pay it no mind. We take those things at home easier to heart because we now have history and time, longer spent time in an enclosed space with our family members. So really, I would not say that the training ground is the activities or responsibilities you fulfill at church. It's the other way around. What really should happen is that those that are involved in church give you a display of personal experiential example. And it's from that, it's not from the fulfilling a need at church. It's your experience or relationship with someone else that really teaches you how to do it on your own, at home, in your own family. When you can feel safe in talking, one man talking to another man. How do you deal with this in your marriage, in your home, in a very confidential, clear, pure setting? And he could say, well, boy, I remember my wife and I, we had this challenge. And these are the things that we did. And apart from saying, these are the things we did, you begin to share life. You go out and you interact now in a different setting that you can see this thing at work because it's by example we learn. You can see this thing at work. So the two families now begin to interact so that something can rub off on each other. And therein lies the principle of iron sharpening iron. But we think a lot of the times it's through, okay, well, because I could put this pedestal here and fix the podium so, and wrap this mic cord this way and put this stand this height and make sure all of them look very nice, that those are the things, or let's say the chairs and them nicely aligned, or Pastor Coconut Water is there and it have the napkin and he has the water. We tend to think, or that we would have done these songs, we learned these new songs, or I make the mix in church sound so good and I put this amount of reverb on the leader microphone, and when she sings, so you hear the echo. Those things never teach us, okay, how to be a better husband and how to be a better wife. It is in the diligence of building marriage and building strong family life we get the commitment to do these things at church correctly. So that's why I would say, Venus, that it's the other way around. It's not necessarily we learn them from in church. If you learn anything really, and I say valuable for use in family life, it's from another family. That really impacts you, that impartation from one person to the other. You sit down and you're talking with Sister Darcy, and something she says to you about how she cares for her family just stands out to you. And you go home thinking about it. And you come back and you say, Darcy girl, well, when you said this to me last week, that just kind of open up a whole thing. What you mean by that? And how all it, because this is the challenge I have. And you and Sister Darcy start to rap concerning this thing. And she now says to you, well, girl, this is how I dealt with it. And you actually see it at play in how she deals with her husband, how she deals with her children. You're seeing the evidence, and it's more than just words. You now have a practical example, because the way that we learn, as Paul said, follow me as I follow, it's by mimicking. It's by mimicking. You can't do it if you're the one executing. You now become the generator of that thing. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible to learn things at church. That's not what I'm saying. Let's not lose where priority is. A lot of the times we lose priority. Yes, as a single person, you give yourself to responsibilities and all of those places that you can serve at church. No problem with that. But what we are actually highlighting is that many a times we take the calling and we place that higher than marriage and family. So I'm not shooting down what you're saying, Venus. Many a times we take those things and say that is ministry, and we neglect that our marriage and our family is ministry, and that actually takes priority, trumps church activity. Right? Those are the things that we're really highlighting. So
Okay, so if
mhm,
let's say Sunday coming, we have service,
mhm.
right? Everybody coming Sunday morning, big service. But let's say, so the husband is the pastor, right? So let's say the wife's birthday is that same day. What should the pastor do in a case like that? Should he miss church to celebrate with her?
Yeah, you can do that.
No, I'm laughing because a lot of people would like that.
Yeah, he can do that.
I know we would have a lot of friends after the session.
I didn't come here for friends. We're not doing this segment for friends. Yeah, he can do that. Many people think, all right, well, um, I have 5 a.m. prayer meeting, but that's the time my husband wants to have sex. Hello, turn around and talk to me. Don't run from this discussion. What's more important, prayer meeting or intimacy with your husband?
No, prayer is always good.
What's more
Prayer is
important?
good.
What's more important?
Both are good.
Both are good, eh?
But prayer is always good too.
Prayer is always good. And nobody's saying that prayer is not good.
Mm-hmm.
What's more important than that point?
Your spouse, because that's your
First place of
place
ministry.
of ministry.
It's your first place of ministry. You could miss a prayer meeting. Or somebody might say, well, your husband can miss a day of sex. What's priority?
That's funny to change his routine.
Say she watching your face. Now, these are the things. These are the things that I think we change or we lose sight of, right? Because growing up too, I fell prey to this growing up. We
put on mask.
growing up, I remember mommy, it used to feel like that. The time we have to go to church, that's when mommy asking us to do stuff, right? It used to feel like that. And one day I said to her, I said, what happened? The devil controlling you.
You're rude.
I was an adult then, but we had a rapport. Yeah, we had a rapport. I said, what happened? That's the time I said, hold it. You don't think about anything. It's not that we didn't want to do anything, you know. It's like she waited until it was time, even though she was going to church as well. It's like, whole day, you didn't know you had these things. So many times, we have to put those things into perspective so that we don't become dysfunctional, right? Um, what you? Many times we lose perspective because we're not understanding, right? And I'm not saying that for the ones who think that you're young people wasting their time in church and what's more important is housework that or things at home. Because yes, there are people who think that way. It's important, yes, for us not to forsake the gathering of the brethren. But what is priority? What is priority is you as a parent, you have to ask yourself, first of all, is my priorities right? Right? Yes, housework needs to be done, but that's also part of your young person's development. Your priority might be different as a parent. Your first priority is to serve your spouse and then serve your children as well. And I say serve, meaning meet their needs, minister to them. And all things being considered, that's really an issue. If it is you're waiting until they're going now to do something at church, to now tell them, you forget to clean the yard and you forget to do this, then that says,
Well, now your spouse feeling to do stuff.
oh, well, if that's the case, if that is the case, no, I'm not saying I don't think somebody's spouse will. I'm not saying. I'm not saying.
This is not how it was supposed to be, eh?
No, it's not.
No.
If it is your spouse has a habit of every time, then something off there. And I say something off because that would feel weird. But we have to understand what takes priority. And when it comes to different calls and our ministry, nobody's saying that you cannot do ministry. And with your spouse now, you would want to sit and have those discussions about whether it's you both agree that it's a season where you give some time to develop or work inside of this vocation or this activity, right? But when the emphasis shifts from giving that priority, take for instance, for us now, we're in a pushing season, right? We're in a very hyperactive season, which we both agree on. When that season shifts, we must adjust to do things differently. We have no children right now. We can push. We have particular goals and things that we want to achieve, and we're working towards it. So it's a push season. When the season changes, again, you have to be listening to God. You have to, as a couple, because your first place of ministry before marriage is your relationship with the Lord. So when the priorities are set correctly, because here it is, we can give our experience now. When your priorities are set correctly, it's not that, all right, well, we're running here, there, and everywhere doing stuff. If God says you are in now a pushing season, a hyperactive season of getting particular things done quickly, we can't be saying, well, Lord, this is our time to just relax and lay back and what that. No, that will be anti-productive to God's requirements. And that is where the balance comes in. Balance is knowing where the priorities are and what the emphasis is for this particular season. So take, for instance, as a parent, you may want to, with your child, let's say they're weak in particular subjects. And maybe now you are changing the emphasis because exams coming up, they're on the stretch towards exams. and you want to get them into some extra lessons so that they sharpen their skills and their ability to bring their grades up. So now you change the season. It's not that that was the season before or that may be the season after, but this particular season, this is the emphasis. And that's what balance looks like. To be able to hear God, especially as a couple, what you must focus on. Because yes, some couples, they go through very intimate seasons. And I say intimate meaning physical intimacy seasons. And then sometimes it's not so active because they're now focusing on something else. Right? So therefore, that's where the balance comes in. So it's not that you know that something else is determining.
Yeah.
Pastor not supposed to determine those seasons for you as a married couple. You, as husband and wife, supposed to sit down and determine that. Whether or not it's a season where you are involved in every single activity in church. Right? It doesn't change your priorities, you know. You may have a push season with one particular thing, but it does not change your priorities. When God now says, focus on this, it doesn't change your priorities. It doesn't say, well, you neglect your husband because God said this is now the emphasis for this particular period. Take, for instance, let's say, come back to the example of a missionary, the person who travels a lot, and the other person is at home. For a season, God might say, all right, go to this travel during this time, and because there is something that you may need to attend to. It doesn't say that your wife is no longer the priority and your marriage is no longer a priority and that newborn child is no longer priority. It's just that the emphasis for now has changed, but the wife is still the priority. Your marriage is still the priority. Your family is still the priority. And you both have to agree that, yes, this is something to work on. This is something that we give emphasis to for this period. But when that is done, you come back. Many people never create that balance. There's where the balance is struck. Understanding that you both can agree, hey, let's focus on this now. Let's focus on that now. Let's focus on the other thing now. But what's most important based on how priorities are stacked, your personal relationship with God, then your marriage and your family after. Everything else could come after based on emphasis. And even inside of marriage, inside of family, there will be emphases from the Lord saying, okay, focus on this now. Now is the time to build a family. Now is the time to do this. Now is the time to work on your finances. Now is the time to work on your social connections. These are emphases God will give you, but your priorities never change. All right. Vina said, I would say yes to what you said. I would have sit down and my pastor will explain me a lot of stuff about life and how to deal with certain things in my marriage. She said it's a woman pastor and she shows me that example. Very good. So again, I love what you're saying. She sits with you and show you the example. So that's the model. That's the model. Life begets more life. Let's use that principle. When you are existing in a place of life, Jesus could not have given abundant life if he didn't have it.
True.
If he wasn't a possessor of abundant life. So therefore, just like salvation, I can't say to you, if I have not accepted Jesus into my heart, it wouldn't be fitting of me to come and say, well, accept Jesus into your heart when I haven't done it. So therefore, the best form of teaching or impartation from one to another is example. You can't do it without the example. You won't be able to walk in it without getting the proper example. We follow others as they follow Christ. This is why, yes, you do have a pastor. The pastor, your pastor, follows Christ and lives that example. Therefore, you now have a television that you can watch how to do it. The television of his life, the television of his family. You can look at it. This is why the scripture says, so that men will see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So therefore, we live out that example. We live out that example so that others can have a practical view of how to apply this biblical principle. We've heard the statement, our lives may be the only Bible that some people read, right? So therefore, let's not have any mixed up scriptures in it. So as Venus is saying, she gets the sit down and chat, but also the example, and that's what we want. We want that example. So, anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot it at us inside of the topic. I must say, very interesting topic. We didn't plan to go in some of the directions that we went, but
one piece of material.
You know, one of the concepts too, I think that we have trouble with is that we take what we do or the activities that or places that we serve at church, and these things become our part of our identity. Let's rearrange that. You are now married. That's why you're pronounced man and wife. That changes fundamentally your identity, right? Because if something happened and pastor tell you you're not allowed to serve here again, that changes, right? Those who God joined together, let no man put asunder. Therefore, that is permanent. It changes your identity. Changes who you are. The two became one flesh. It changes your identity. So if I one day decide to ups and say, see this thing, I separated myself from this beautiful woman here, that'll be the stupidest thing I've ever done. But apart from that, I'd be.
Sorry, that was supposed to come out. Sorry.
Not open to re-jumping out.
I was just repeating how you said it. And it sounded as I was calling you stupid.
It's just the timing. It's just the timing. If it is I decide just out of the blue and say, see this thing? I fed up at this marriage, yes, and I'm going my way. It would be the dumbest decision I've ever made. But what I'm essentially doing is going back on my identity.
Yeah.
Right? If God says your state changes, it's not to be undone. It's like, this is why only death can change that state. This is why only death can change that state. Yes, we sign documents when we go through divorces and stuff like that. But in God's eyes, that didn't happen. I'm not going to touch on divorce and stuff right now.
You're running from the topic right now.
But your state, it cannot be undone before the Lord. You ever see some couples and they start to resemble? It's almost like they begin to, she was looking like one person and he was looking like one person, and then some of them, the face start to change and they start to resemble. Well, I wouldn't go there. That's miserable. That's just me. But it's almost like that begins that thing, that bonding happens. And interestingly enough, we think that that can be undone. No, it's not. It's not. So therefore, the permanency of marriage, that is where we get that priority from. So we keep those things in mind. This is why you can't just jump into marriage just like that, because it's so important. And for any person who is seeking to get married because it seems nice and you want to be able to have sex without guilt, no, think clearly. Think clearly. This is a once and for all kind of deal. Just as those who die cannot come back, only death can nullify a marriage, really. Right? Only death. Before the eyes of the Lord, only death nullifies a marriage. So you want to think that permanent. That permanent. Because you want to begin to put those thoughts into your processing of, okay, how I'm going to do life. Because if it is, I am joining with this person and we together for however long God says. And when I say however long God says, until death do you part. You build differently. You first think that, hey, this is not my enemy. And I have to now find ways to work with this person because we're heading in the same direction. So as I said before, your calling as a single person, its priority begins to evaporate or fade or begins to decrease. So it moves from 50 ounces and it starts to come down. So that balloon of priority starts to shrink and deflate. And its ability to lift the weight of importance now drops to the ground. Because marriage is now emerging, as we said before. Now it springs up. Are you perceiving it? That marriage is now your highest priority after your personal relationship with God. Personal relationship, that's a given. You have to do that. But when it comes to how you relate to other people, relational things, yeah. Relational things, marriage comes first. Then your family, your children. So we ensure that we're keeping those priorities in order and not say, well, that's not important, or because he this way, I going and there's no man and going and think I going and serve the Lord. Many of us could end up in a state where God is disappointed because we've neglected our families. Me ain't saved, so me ain't listening to he. She ain't saved, me and listening to she. She stopped going to church. She backslide. And we think, okay, that or serving in church is priority. And we're not doing the needful to ensure that ministry happens in our marriage. Let's not let marriages fail and think that building the stuff in the building, church building, is more important. When we think that way, we miss God's priority. We miss it big time. That we met the needs of everyone else, but not the needs of our spouse and our family. We gave everyone else our time and our energy and our effort. Even when you go and you give your best to everyone and everything else outside and you're giving your family dregs, I just do this and I buy this and I'm bringing home the money. No, it's more than the money and what you buy. It's the quality of time spent, heartfelt conversation, showing emotion. And I say showing emotion, hugging your family and praying with them, spending time, just talking. Some families don't know how to relate, but you'll go and talk with sister and brother this and have long conversation. We chat for 2 hours and you're having what we just call second service and third service. You move from church finish, but you stand up between the chairs talking and all they talking, you're only switching legs, or they sit down or they stand up. And all they move from the sanctuary or they going in the hallway outside and all they talking, and all they going on and on. You reach outside by the church front door now, and all they stand up there talking and this and that. You see, all right, everybody leaving, and the place ready to lock up. Before you know it, all they stand up outside in the car park, two all the cars side by side, talking and gill and da. But you can't have a good conversation with your own family like that. What you laughing at, Mrs. Boy? We know how to do it outside, but we're not practicing and developing our skill where it's most needed. It's most needed at home. At home. So 12 minutes to the top of the hour. You have any more thoughts that you wanted to share? Why?
Ready to wrap.
Right? So even your your places of service at church. Yes, God uses those things. He would use them, right? And his ability to work through you is amplified when your background work is done correctly, right? Why I'm saying this, you 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 make what you do at church more effective. We touched on this before. You make what you do more effective when you have that witness, when you live with a clear conscience. um it's like it's like my marriage falling out. I'm using an example. If my marriage is falling apart, someone comes to me, um, Brother Lynden, you know, I having this problem in my marriage, and I'm now trying to give encouragement. No, I'm not telling the person that I have the same issue, but I'm trying to give encouragement. I'm trying to pull it out of thin air. No, no, Denise. Say I come out for everybody tonight. They're really driving the point home, but I appreciate the perspectives. Um, if we're not living it, we won't be able to minister to anybody. All we said was some words, but there was no spirit behind it. There was no true impartation. Um, and there would have been guilt that would have been transferred to the person as well, because we know full well we don't have that right. We don't have it right. And that is passed on as well. The guilt. We we can't afford to be a people any longer that minister from an empty place. Yeah. You can't pour from an empty cup. and your cup isn't full by some mysterious, vacuous, strange thing that nobody can put their hands on. It really comes from um, the truth of your life, the example that you live out, that someone could say, somebody should be able to say, can I just get a chance to come and observe your family and you don't have a problem with it? People should be able to do that. Not that you just invite people willy-nilly, but if the need arises that they can come and be a fly, well, not necessarily a fly, but come and sit among your family and see you all operate and learn from your family. That's what should happen. It's not that, well, he does well talk so godly in church. And when he home, oh God, he's a pig to his family. He and your wife always quarreling. The other day I was by them and he bust two cuss and she. No, that can't be the case. That can't be the case, right? Your life has to be that example where you can say to someone, come and see. It's good for me to tell you, but it's better for you to see it. See it in operation. And that is the highest form of ministry. It's not just in laying on hands and praying shakara, shakara, robo shandai, shandai, Honda, Mitsubishi.
Boy.
And greasing down somebody. No, it's not in that. The truest form of ministry is the example of Christ likeness. And if we're able to do that, pull ministry back home, then we get it right. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much people you prayed for. And I was an intercessor, I just join with this one, and we always join in with that one, and we pray, we fast.
You're making a mockery.
No, it's just how some people, because there is a fervor when they say it.
Yeah.
But the fervor really should be in the practice of the thing, not in how we say it. So therefore, the most important thing is doing life right. So we come back to where we started. How do you find balance or navigate marriage when your call is very different? There's quite a few things we learned from that. Priorities and what is ministry or calling. Your calling is your vocation, but that changes. And also other people can do that very same thing that you're doing. So if you used to do it and your life has changed, you can stop. Yeah? You can stop and focus on your marriage. Focus on your family. The thing is, it's not us building the church, That's not our responsibility. He said, I will build my church. Not I will tell you build my church. That's not a scripture found in the Bible. Never said I will tell you build my church. No pastor can make that claim. I will tell you, that's not a scripture. He says, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So we have to keep in mind, yes, we serve, but God is building his church. And his church, big part of it is you doing what he asked you to do, which is focusing on your family and your marriage and your family in that order. Lisa, good evening to you. She said, I had to text and tell you, Lynden, well said. Holmes is baking. She said she's enjoying this so much that she started baking. This man spitting facts. Auntie Joan Lucas, she said, hi, beautiful couple. I'm asking kindly, will this be on YouTube? Yes. We made every effort to ensure that it will be on YouTube. So by tomorrow, tomorrow around this time, it should be available. If you're not subscribed yet, please do so that you can get the alerts when we upload the videos. Denise is saying she wants homemade bread too. You supply it. Denise, what? Says sure. So yes, the importance of it is that you'll never really be able to serve God correctly if we only think, well, what I do there is that. Yeah. What I do there is just that. You can search for marriage mentors. You'll find myself and my wife in the videos. Marriage mentors. Um, all right. Someone says, remember, just married to my husband a few months after we had a convention and his ex was there. I could see him, or his ex or your ex was there. You could see him where it was after 4 p.m. in the evening. I see him where all that time he was with these people. It was not so long most of the time. Just to clarify, is it that he went with the ex? Was it that he went with the ex? Don't worry, Erica, you can always get it on YouTube afterward. Denise is saying, we are spiritual beings living in a physical world and we have to fulfill both mandates, not forsaking one for the other. And there is a way that we have to do it. We start, yes, with spiritual things, but we execute in a very physical way. Many times we try to do it the other way around, try to achieve a spiritual thing by a physical way. But it starts in the spirit. Anything that is birthed in the spirit has a correct execution, and we want to ensure that it's birthed in the spirit. A lot of the times we try to achieve things for God because it looks nice, and it wasn't asked by the Lord to us to do. So the things that are asked by him to do, he births in the spirit. Before we got married physically, our marriage was birthed in the spirit. We would have told our story about God telling us, I want you all married before the end of 2018. Yeah, that was an actual thing. I want you all married before the end of 2018. And we negotiated with God. All right, Lord, the end of 2018 kind of soon, you know, but we'll do it in the first month of 2019. And God allowed it. And I say he allowed it. Yes, he gave us permission. Literally 1 month from discussing with God, Lord, the end of 2018 is too close. Exactly a month, the 19th of December, 2018. And we got married on the 19th of January, 2019. So yes, everything that is, you have to start spiritually and execute that which the Lord says spiritually first before it's done physically. All right. So she says he ended up going with his ex based on the thing. That's after the convention you're talking about. And those are the things I think a lot of times that might be some other issues there, but priorities, right? Priorities are the thing that people lose sight of. Priorities, having proper priorities. A lot of the times we think, well, I could have my own set of priorities, and it's different from what God says my priorities should be. People try to do it that way and screw it up. They have dysfunctional marriages, dysfunctional families, and then blame everybody else. Everybody else. So it's just about that time. After 11 already,
Yes, it is.
time flew. Mrs. Mahon is a little quiet tonight, eh?
I'm listening. I'm listening.
And he gave me a Hezekiah this evening,
I'm
girl,
listening.
a couple of times. So I hope this segment was helpful to all of us in some way, form, or fashion, and it allows us to look at ministry a little bit different. Now, we would have touched on some of these things before, and as I said, a 15-year-old girl recommended this particular topic, and when she said it, we just looked at one another like, we just turned. It was Anna Marie that actually recommended this topic, cookies and cream, as in a sense called a strawberry pie cosa. So, but excellent topic indeed. I think it was helpful, and I hope that many of us could rethink our priorities and rethink what we see or where we place ministry at in our lives, and seeing that it has to come back home to our marriages, to our family, and then begin to overflow and spill over in the other things that we do, whether it be at school, whether it be at work, whether it be at church, because all of these places are places that we get to practice what we learned. Yeah. Shade says he's always late for this program. Don't worry, it's available. It'll be available on YouTube by tomorrow evening. Yeah. So just search, for those of you who've never done it, search Marriage Mentors, and you'll see all the previous videos that we uploaded. Because this is quite connecting with balancing marriage and ministry.
It is.
But this time we looked at a few other things that we didn't touch on in that segment. Yeah. So this is how we wrap up Marriage Mentors for this evening. Thank you again for joining us and commenting. We appreciate all of your input. Even though Mrs. Mahon was a little quiet today.
No, I'm listening. I told you I'm listening.
She is quiet. She is quiet.
I laughed. I listened.
And you too. Your face to the wall, like Hezekiah. Ask for another 15. But yes. So until the next one, where we have another segment of Marriage Mentors, second and fourth Thursday of every month. So it'll be in the month of November, best month of the year. You sighing. I could say that November coming. To each his own. And to each his own. You would say is
right now, my only thing with you is you're not telling me what you want to do.
I say it best when I say nothing at all. So this is how we wrap up Marriage Mentors for today. Dealing with the topic, how do we navigate marriage when the callings are very different on each person's life? Mr. and Mrs. Mahon saying, ciao for now.
Love you much. Ladies,
Gentlemen,
people,
courting couples,
and all our single folk.
we've got something just for you.
Tours.
Sky 99.5 FM Reloaded is the place to be every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m.
to 11 p.m.
with yours truly, Mr. and Mrs. Mahon. Join the conversation as we dive deep into the taboo topics around love, marriage, and relationships. Topics like sex and intimacy,
How to live and cleave.
money,
Disuse.
infidelity,
Singles in the church.
and more. So join us every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m.
to 11 p.m.
right here on Sky 99.5 FM Reloaded.